In this video, we're going to talk about arrays. So an array is basically just a list of variables, and in JavaScript it's super flexible and super powerful. You can just add whatever you want to the list. It could be strings, it could be numbers, it could be booleans, and it can be a mixture of those. You can even put in other arrays inside of the array. So you might not want to have an array that's totally disorganized like that because it could end up getting confusing and cause bugs, but you do have a lot of flexibility just built into the JavaScript array, and it's really simple to use. It's basically just like creating any other variable. So you can say var, I'm going to give an example. Let's say you're making a shopping list. Shopping, so I'm going to call it my shopping list, and then I'm just going to say equals, and I can just put 2 square brackets. That means it's an array. Right now it's an empty array, but it's an array. So let's say I'm going to just add on here some text to display the array. So I'm going to say my shopping list, and I'm going to display it at, let's say, 100, 100. And okay, so right now it's not showing anything because there's nothing in our list. Now let's say I add one item, so I'm going to add them in as strings, so I have to put it in quotes. And let's say I add in milk, and that's the first item in the array. And okay, it says milk up there. If I add bread, then we're going to have 2 items in our array. And if I add another one, now we have 3 items in our array, and they all are getting printed out on the screen over there. Now, sometimes instead of accessing the whole array like this, you want to just access one item. Let's say you just want to show the first item in the array or the second item in the array. So to do that, you have to reference that item by its index. And so each item really, it's this list of items you're creating is a numbered list, and that index is the key to the value. So the only thing that's a little confusing about this in JavaScript and in most programming languages is that we don't start counting at 1, we start counting at 0. And this is one of the great tragedies of computer programming, but to save memory, they start counting their indices. The index starts at 0. So the first item in the list is at index 0, the second one is at index 1, third one is at index 2. So it gets a little confusing. We do, as humans, do this when we count dates and ages. So when we say a person is having their first birthday, they're really finishing their first year, they're starting their second year. And during the first year, they're not 1 year old yet, they're 0 years old or something. And the same thing when we count dates. If you say something is happening in 2019, it's really the first year is the year 0, and then we're counting up from there. So we do that a little bit, but it's a little counterintuitive. I made a little visualization here to help us see how this works. So up here I'm showing a box with the index number, and over here I'm showing the item that's the value of that index. So if we add another item onto here, onto our shopping list, and we rerun this, then we get a new index with that item. And so you can see bread is at index 0, milk is 1, eggs is 2, and cereal is 3. And just to emphasize, I could just add some number in here, and those numbers will just be added to the array, and it doesn't care that some of them are numbers and some of them are strings. It doesn't matter. But just keep in mind that this is the way the indices work. So back to our array here, let's say I want to just print, instead of printing the entire list, let's say I just want to print the first item on the list. So here where I'm saying my text, instead of saying I want to print the entire array that's held in the my shopping list variable, I put the 2 square brackets over there, and then I write the number of the index. So if I do my shopping list 0, that's going to just print the first item in the array. If I do my shopping list 1, that's going to print the second item in the array, and the same thing with number 2 would print the third item in the array. So at first a little confusing. Every now and then you'll forget, and you'll get some error from that. You'll forget to like subtract 1 or something like that, but you'll get used to it like everything else as you use it It's not such a big deal, but in the beginning it's a little counterintuitive. The other thing I want to show you now is just there's a whole bunch of methods that JavaScript has for manipulating arrays, for doing things with arrays. I just want to show you two simple ones, which is how to add an item to an array and remove an item from the array. So these are the push and pop methods, and these will just add or remove an item from the end to the end of the array or from the end of the array. There's other methods for getting specific items or a bunch of items from the middle, but for now, let's say I wanted to just add another item, shopping list push, and I could push in another item in here, and now if I go back to printing the entire array, I'm going to be pushing in serial to the end of this array, and then I'll print the whole thing. So we should get, oh, what did I do? Oh, my shopping list, sorry. My shopping list push. There we go. And so now we have the array, including this extra item that I added on. If instead of pushing, I popped, I did my shopping list.pop, it's actually going to remove the eggs from the end of the array, and I will just get milk and bread. So those are two basic methods that are important to use. In the next video, we'll learn how to do some more advanced things with arrays by combining it with some other types of code that lets us really together do powerful things. But the main idea is that an array lets us organize our variables into groups, and most importantly, as we'll see, when we have information coming in dynamically from users, we don't know what it's going to be, we don't know how many we're going to need, we can't just make variables for it. Let's say we want to make an application that can take a to-do list, or let's hear like a shopping list, or we want to be able to have people put posts onto a website or comments or things like that. Those are all lists. In fact, a huge percentage of web applications are really just different kinds of lists of items. And usually that's dynamic content that's being created by users, and you just have to be able to have this list variable that you can keep adding onto and subtracting from, and it's not fixed to a certain size. You can just make it bigger and smaller as things come in and go out. Just like if you're making a shopping list, a user would add items to that list, and then when they're done, they would cross them off and take them off the list, and it has to be flexible like that. So that's why we need arrays, and we'll learn how to use them in that kind of more dynamic way as we go forward.